I'm about to give you the exact word-for-word script that has closed over $500,000 in coaching and consulting deals. Now, this video isn't going to be about theory or principles. This is going to be the actual words that you can say on your sales call from the moment you pick up the phone to the moment the client says yes. Most coaches lose sales because they're just winging it. You see, they get on a call with no real structure, no script, and certainly no system. And then they just wonder why the prospect says, I need to think about it. Well, that ends today. Here's what most coaches think that sales is. They think that it's just about convincing someone, persuading them, overcoming their resistance, basically talking someone into buying something that they don't actually want. And look, this is why they're terrible at it, because nobody wants to be pushy. So you hold back. You're afraid to talk about price. They're afraid to ask for the sale. And the prospect can honestly feel that energy. But look, here's the truth. Selling is not about persuasion. Selling is about diagnosis. Think about it like a doctor. See, when you go to the doctor doesn't just walk in and start pitching you medications. The doctor asks questions. Where does it hurt? How long has it been going on? What have you tried before? And only after the doctor fully understands the problem do they prescribe you a solution. And you don't argue with that prescription because you trust the diagnosis. The reason your calls aren't closing, it's not because you're bad at selling. It's because you don't have an actual diagnostic process. So you're going straight to the pitch and hoping that the prospect buys. What I'm about to walk you through is the actual 6-phase call framework. This is the actual system that I use with my teams, and it works for coaching, it works for consulting, it works for any high-ticket service. The 6 phases are introduction, information gathering, transitioning, pitch, committing, and objection handling. Each phase has a very specific job. Each phase flows into the next. And when you run them in order, the prospect closes themselves. You don't even have to push. Now, before I break down each phase, I put the entire framework into a fill-in-the-blank template called the 5K sales call script. It has the exact structure, the questions, the transition. It's free. It's linked down in the description. Go ahead and grab it now so you can follow along as we go. Introduction has 2 parts, rapport and frame. Rapport is simple. You are a human being talking to another human being. You pick up the phone and you say, hey, is this blank? What's up? How's your week been so far? That's it. You're not launching directly into a pitch. You're not reading off some sort of script in a robotic voice. What you're doing is you're just being a normal person who is genuinely curious about how their day or week is going. Here is where most coaches completely stop. They do this small talk and then they say, so tell me, what are you looking for? And this is a mistake because now the prospect is driving the call. You see, the second part of the introduction is the frame. And this is honestly what separates amateurs from professionals. After the rapport, you say, do you have a pen and paper? Maybe something to take notes with? Then you say something like, I like to customize these calls as much as I possibly can. So instead of just going over a huge laundry list of things that we could do, I'd really love to get a good understanding of where you're at specifically right now, what you're working on, what issues you're having, and more importantly, what your goals are. And then from there, you can share with you just the things that apply to you specifically. And look, if at any point I think that I can obviously help you at a deeper level, I'll walk you through that. Does that sound fair? See, that's the frame. You just did 3 critical things. You took control of the call. You set expectations that this is a 2-way conversation, not a pitch. And you got the permission to ask deep questions. The pen and paper is key. That's a micro commitment. See, they are now invested. They're taking notes. They're not, scrolling on their phone or anything else that would be distracting. Now, the next phase is the longest and the one that if you make a mistake will break the entire call. See, most coaches ask just 1 or 2 surface level questions and then lump them into the pitch. See, you are going to ask 6 layers deep. And by the time you finish this phase, the prospect would have even sold themselves. It starts with isolating the problem. You say something along the lines of, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that you are having right now when it comes to making progress towards your goals. Obviously, you'll customize this for your specific offer. Now you're going to let them answer. Let them talk. Don't interrupt them. Then you're going to probe. You're going to ask follow-up questions. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? How has that actually impacted what you're doing? How else has it impacted things? See, you want to understand why the problem is actually a problem. Not just the surface issue, but the real impact behind it. Next, you're going to assess their current efforts. You say, what are you currently doing right now to try to fix this? This tells you what they have tried and what's not working. It also, more importantly, shows you what's missing. Then you're just going to chunk down, and this is where you get very specific numbers. You ask, last month, how many real opportunities did you have? How many were a good fit? How many converted? And at what level? See, most coaches are afraid to ask these specific questions, but this is really where the real problem emerges, because you both know the actual numbers, not just the story they're telling themselves. After you have the numbers, you are going to widen the gap. You're going to ask, how long has this been going on? How has this actually impacted you even beyond your business? Has this affected other areas of your life? What is the worst part about all of this? This is where emotion enters the conversation. Not because you are trying to manipulate them, but because you are helping them see the full cost of staying stuck. They knew it was bad, but most people don't stop to add up just how bad it is. Then you're going to plant doubt. You're going to ask, what do you think has been keeping you from figuring this out on your own? See, this is a very powerful question, because whatever they answer is the reason that they need help. They are telling you what they are doing is not working. And finally, you get the desired situation. You ask, if you were able to ultimately figure out this big problem, what is your goal? And then you follow up with, and then what's the monetary goal? Why that number specifically? What are the non-monetary goals, personal goals, the stuff that hitting this would actually allow you to achieve? See, now you have the full picture. You know where they are, you know what's broken, how long has it been broken for, what is it actually costing them, why they can't fix it alone, and where they want to be. See, they told you all of this. You did not assume any of it. Now, the next phase is the one that nobody teaches, and it is the reason why most of your pitches fall flat. Before you pitch anything, you outline the keys to success. You say, in order to put yourself in the position where you are hitting your goals, the reality is you need two things. Number one, a consistent source of high quality opportunities that, for example, want your offer. And number two, the skills and proven frameworks to turn those opportunities into results consistently. Those are the two things you need to focus on. Make sense? Then you walk them through each one briefly and tie it back to what they told you. For the first one, you're going to talk about their current lead generation, for example, why a better method would serve them better. For the second, you ask whether they have a proven framework for converting, or if that's something that they would need help establishing. They're always going to say they need help with it, because they do. That's why they're on the call to begin with. Then you do the tie down. You say something like, I feel like we've covered quite a bit of ground here. Is there anything at all you feel like that we haven't covered? Then the transition itself. Well, you're going to say, based on what you've told me, I definitely can help. Where do you think we should go from here? I can walk you through the entire process of how we would obviously help you hit your goal if you'd like, but tell me where you want to go. This is critical. So you're not saying, let me pitch you now. You are letting them ask for it. And when they say, yeah, walk me through it, the pitch lands completely differently because they actually invited it. Now, here's where the three pillars come in. And this is why you actually ask them if they have a pen and paper at the beginning. You say, on your pen and paper, write 1 through 3 with some space in between them. Let me preface this by saying everything that we do is customized based on what is best for the client. For you specifically, it's going to be these 3 things. Then you deliver each pillar. Each one connects directly back to something that they said during the information gathering phase. Pillar 1 is going to tie to the skill gap. You're going to say something like, you mentioned you're struggling with a specific skill issue, which is causing a specific impact. So what we do is we give you access to our platform that covers the actual fundamentals that you need to consistently move forward. As a result, you start seeing results immediately. Pillar 2 ties into their need for guidance. You say, this is the live coaching component. You're not just getting generic advice from someone who has never actually done this. You're getting real strategic guidance customized to help you move forward faster. Now, pillar 3 ties to their isolation. You say, you mentioned that you've been doing things mostly on your own. So we plug you into a community of people all striving towards the exact same goal. That way you have motivation, you have accountability, and you have people who actually understand the journey. Then you're simply going to wrap up by walking them through how everything gets delivered. The onboarding, the coaching cadence, the access, the support. The key here is that every single pillar references something that they told you in phase 2. That is why the information gathering phase is so important. Now, without it, you're just listing a list of features. With it, you are solving their specific problems. Now, for the close, it's not a close in a traditional sense. This is more of a temperature check followed by a commitment. You say, just curious, in terms of the process specifically, how do you feel? If they are certain, you're going to move forward. If you kind of sense some uncertainty, you dig in. You say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being get me off this call and 10 being this sounds like exactly what I need, where do you kind of fall right now? If they say 9 or 10, you move forward. If they are 7 below, you ask something like, okay, and what do you think is actually keeping you from being a 9 or 10? Then you're going to handle whatever comes up before you mention the price of the investment. Now, when it's time, you state clearly, the investment to get you to X goal is Y. That's it. Clear, direct, no apologizing for the pricing. And then you shut up. You do not feel the silence. You don't start discounting. You let them process. Now, after you state the investment, one of 3 things will happen. 1, they say yes. Great, you just get them started. 2, they ask clarifying questions about the process or the investment. Now, those are buying questions, not an objection. You need to answer those directly. Or 3, they say something like, I need to think about it, or I need to talk to my partner, or I'm just not sure about the investment. Now, here's the key. Most of the time, the first thing that they'll say is not the real objection. It is what we call a smokescreen. Your job is to peel that back. If they say that they need to think about it, you're going to say something like, no worries. Can I ask you a question? Do you feel like what we went over actually can get you to your goals? Because honestly, that's the most important part. Get them to confirm that the solution works. Then ask what specifically is coming up that makes them actually want to think about it. And now the real concern is going to surface. It's usually one of 3 things. Uncertainty about the investment, fear about whether it'll work for them, or a partner that they feel they need to consult. Now look, each one has a specific process, but the principle is relatively the same across all of them. You don't argue, you don't pressure, you help them think through the decision clearly by asking questions that reveal what is actually driving the hesitation. The most important thing I can tell you about objection handling in a whole is this. If your information gathering was thorough, most objections dissolve before they ever come up because the prospect already told you the problem, felt the cost of inaction, and described the future they want. The case for moving forward was built by them, not you. So, this 6-phrase framework is not something I read in a book. It is the exact process that I have used to close over $500,000 in coaching and consulting deals for myself and for the clients that I work with. Now, when someone tells you that they can't close, I typically ask them to walk me through their last call. And look, 9 times out of 10, they're rushed through the information gathering. They ask, maybe 1 or 2 questions and then jump straight into pitching. That's why you keep hearing, I need to think about it. Install this framework, follow it step by step, and your sales calls will feel completely different. Not because you're becoming a better salesperson, but because you are building a system that makes buying the obvious next step. And by the way, this exact 6-stage framework is exactly what I've used with my sales teams implemented inside of my partners' companies. Where, for example, one of our sales reps started high ticket sales his very first week and closed no deals. He was brand new. He's never had done it before. I actually spent 12 days, an hour and a half each day, training him specifically on this 6-stage framework to where the directly week after that, he went on to break company records in cash collected, also breaking company records, and total commission paid to one specific rep. So I say all that to say that this process works. So look, if you have been struggling to close on sales calls, now you know why. You didn't have a framework. You didn't have a real system. You were simply just winging it and hoping for the best. This 6 phases: introduction, information gathering, transition, pitch, committing, and objection handling, turn every single call into a structured conversation where the prospect actually closes themselves. Now, if you want to make sure that people all getting on these calls actually qualified and ready to buy, here is the next video that you should watch. It actually shows you how to build the exact system that puts the right people into your calendar every single week. That is linked in the description below, and I will see you there.